Hey folks, many thanks for tuning in. I've got some right banter for you today, as the kids maybe said once upon a time, and it involves Shaun Attwood and a former employer of his, brandnewtube.com. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button first of all though, and you might as well just pre-like the video because you're definitely going to like this one, trust me. So this happened a few days back now, and we all know by now that Mr. Attwood is terrified of the Daddygate story hitting the mainstream and being open to scrutiny by the masses, because his story is so full of holes that it just won't wash with any person who can think for themselves. No right-thinking person, in my opinion, will accept that having an autistic woman dressed as a child in a sexual situation while calling a man daddy is okay, especially when that man claims to be all about fighting a war on child abusers. I'm pretty sure that nobody thinks that's okay, really. So he's been trying to rewrite it, saying that it was the woman's idea, saying that she was dressed as a milkmaid, saying that she's not really autistic, it's Asperger's that she has, and saying that it was a way for her to get over her abuse. And he's also been suggesting that he was tricked into making this damning statement, which isn't going to go away for him.
I took advantage of a trafficked vulnerable person reenacting this, and it made him relive it, and it probably traumatized that person. I completely agree with that. Shouldn't have done it, and they are 100% right about that.
So you've seen that before if you follow along, but that was Shaun Attwood admitting to taking advantage of an autistic sexual abuse victim, a guest on his show where he interviews many vulnerable sexual abuse victims. Now we all know what went down, pardon the pun, and it didn't go well with his audience. Mr. Attwood insists that anyone covering the topic of the Daddygate scandal is nothing more than a troll, a liar, and someone who has sick fantasies in their own minds. I covered this in my last video. So he's been doing the rounds on various podcasts, trying to rewrite history basically, and on a couple of these podcasts he said that Brand YouTube, his former employer, tricked him into saying the things that he said in his interview with Sonia, which is where he admitted that he took advantage of a vulnerable trafficking victim. So he's been suggesting that Brand YouTube made him say things that were either not true or that were against his better judgment, and that he was tricked by them, making them look dishonest. And he isn't just saying this on little channels, he's been saying it on the True Geordie podcast, for example, which has almost 2 million subscribers.
Well, I'm glad you are allowing me to explain this, Brian and Lawrence, because I've been under legal instruction not to talk about this since it happened by the company that I was doing the live streams for. And that company, they said, what we want you to do is get grilled by your co-host and admit to everything, and don't try to defend your actions, and this will blow over. We're going to suspend you for now, this will blow over, but then we're going to hire you back. So I did as they said. They said, you know, we're media experts. You need to listen to us and do this. So against my better judgment, because the alarm bells were going off in my head, I did what they said, and I just admitted to everything, and I never tried to defend myself, and I just said, look.
Make no mistake, this is Shaun Attwood attempting to change the narrative, because he went from saying he takes full responsibility for this alleged prank where the autistic woman was dressed as a child in a sexual situation. Again, ask yourself, even if that is a prank, what is a man in his position doing that for? And do you think the masses would accept his story? I think not. But he's since pivoted to publishing videos where the female says that everything was her idea. Of course, none of this flies if you point out the admission that he took advantage of her and made her recreate her abuse, and that is why he's now trying to say that Brand YouTube made him say that against his better judgment. I personally think that Attwood realises the bigger he gets, the more questions are going to be asked by people who are not enchanted by him or his sub count, and he's pretty much screwed himself because there's no spin that he can put on the Daddygate video and his behaviours since that people are really going to go in for. He was lucky that he was able to put a spin on being a drug dealer, to be perfectly honest with you, But even on that, the culture is starting to move on, and a lot of people, especially younger people, no longer think drug dealing is cool and edgy. A lot of people actually consider drug dealing to be quite a degenerate pastime, and they don't look admiringly at drug dealers, especially ones who only stopped because they got caught. This is not a man that retired from the industry. This is a man who got caught and got spanked so hard that he ran away from the trade. And yet now he's doing talks in schools, etc., saying that he learned his lesson. I'm not passing judgment on him particularly on this point, as I do, as I've said before, think that all drugs should be legalised, but it's just a fact. The culture is moving on. People these days do not look up to drug dealers, especially when methamphetamine made up a huge part of their wares. So anyway, fast forward to the other day, and Attwood is engaging in an interview where he states that Brand YouTube set him up.
One of the major consequences that befell me from the prank was losing my live streaming job with a certain channel. I was told by the owner of that channel that I needed to go online and be grilled by my co-host. And he said, just don't try and defend yourself, just admit to everything. Callie, who was, the whole situation was blowing up and we were in constant contact. And she said to me, they're setting you up, don't do it, they're setting you up. If you go and do that, they're not going to give you your job back. And she was 100% right on that mark.
This interview was then followed by a live Q&A, and an edited excerpt of this live Q&A has appeared on Brand YouTube's homepage, so that's what we're going to go over today. And as I say, under the rules of fair use, I'm going to be reporting on this, but I will put a link down below so you can check it out for yourself. And they also linked the original interview, which was quite funny actually, because Mr. Attwood once again repeatedly stated that anyone who criticises him is likely to be a paedophile or a paedophile enabler. Now, it's my opinion that a man who films an autistic drug addict on her knees, dressed as a child, after she told him about her child's sexual abuse, is probably not the one to be calling people paedophiles, or for that matter claiming that he is fighting a war against paedophiles. Something about that doesn't sound quite right. But anyway, that's maybe just me and my opinion there. But Mr. Attwood, I suggest, should be shifting away from that topic as skillfully as he can, rather than making ridiculous but clearly defamatory statements against other creators, such as myself. And of course, it's not just his critics like me that he's been firing defamatory remarks towards. He fires defamatory remarks all over the place, in my opinion, because, as I say, he got called out by his former employer, Muhammed Butt, for his claims about Muhammed and Brand YouTube itself. Now, Muhammed actually phoned in to this Q&A that Shaun Attwood was engaging in, live on air, while Shaun was trying to justify his actions and, again, rewrite the scandal. And he schooled Shaun like an absolute child.
Shaun?
Yeah?
I just need to ask something. It's Muhammad on the phone.
Okay.
Are you okay with him coming into the chat?
Absolutely.
Okay. What I'll do is I'll just...
You're muted right now.
Shaun, how are you?
Yeah, really good. Everything's going really good. How's things going for you?
Well, I'm only going to make a small point for you. I watched the Geordie podcast and you made some accusations on there. Obviously, it's innuendo, but everybody knows, pretty much everybody knows who you're talking about, BNT and me. I think you need to stop. This is my advice to you now, because I've watched John Ann's interview. You need to stop suggesting that I forced you to do anything or told you to tell lies or confess to anything. I told you to tell the truth and everything will be fine. Shaun can confirm it crystal clear on the phone to you now. I never once told him to tell any lies or confess to anything that he hasn't done. I simply told him to tell the truth and things will be fine. What we didn't realise is what that truth was as it unfolded, because it was live. So obviously, the more that came out, the more dramatic and obviously shocking it was for us. We had to look at all that situation. Suggesting that in any way he was set up and stitched up is not true, and he needs to stop saying that. Now, I can only be as fair as that, and I can only say, listen, Stop saying it. It's not true. I'm here now telling you. It's not true. Sean was asked to tell the truth, not make anything up or make things worse for himself. The level of truth he came out with, I was almost falling off my chair. But I don't know what you're getting out of spreading that you was tricked. It's a very serious issue and you need to stop doing that. If you're going to insist on that on Anne's show and on that live stream, if you were going to insist that I tricked you, then you need to stand by that, Sean. You need to stand by. The accusation you're making is Muhammed Butt of Brand YouTube tricked Shaun Attwood into admitting things he did not do and did not want to admit, and hence was not let back on, although he had guarantees to come back on no matter what the issue was. You need to make that statement clear, then we can address it.
What Sean's saying is he's not going to basically make any statement now, because it could end up, you could turn round and use it against him in a court case of prosecution.
Right, what Sean needs to understand, and I'm giving him every opportunity right now, he's already defamed me by innuendo. He's made it crystal clear. He's talked about the show. He's talked about the presenter. It's crystal clear in any liable court of law that he's talking about Brand YouTube and me. So he's not going to retract the fact that by innuendo he's suggested that I tricked him and asked him to do things, otherwise he couldn't get his job back, where he's never had a job anywhere else in the last 10 years regarding a platform. The only platform he's been on and worked on is Brand YouTube. And he seriously sat there thinking that that isn't basically defaming Brand YouTube or me.
Now, ridiculously, Shaun Attwood attempted to use Callie Diamond, the sex trafficking victim.
Hi, Daddy.
He tried to use her as a witness. She apparently overheard the conversation between Shaun and Muhammed because it happened to be on speakerphone. Sounds legit.
God, I wish I'd have recorded that call when they told me to do it, exactly what I just said.
Yeah.
But you know what? It was on speakerphone, and guess who heard it? Who was with me? Kelly. She heard it.
This is not a legitimate defence, and Callie is not a legitimate witness. He recently published a video just a few days ago, in fact, a couple of weeks ago, where Callie looked very much the worse for wear, where she said herself that she just tells people what they want to hear, so clearly she is not a reliable witness. But Shaun still tried to use her as a witness. He said, after being challenged by Muhammed, that he was going to give Callie a phone, and this was with no pre-warning whatsoever, and that she was going to back up Shaun's story to everyone. Now, putting aside the fact that, again, she's admitted she'll just say what people want to hear, you can see Shaun Attwood texting just before he phones her. It's not discreet at all.
I hope you'll be able to hear this. So
Yeah.
I'll unmute now. So go on, Muhammed. You go ahead.
Yeah, Sean, can you hear me?
Yes, Mohammed, how's it going?
Speak now.
Go for it.
Sean, how are you?
Yeah, really good. Everything's going really good. How's things going for you?
Well, I'm only going to make a small point for you. I watched the Geordie podcast, and you made some accusations on there. Obviously, it's innuendo, but everybody knows, pretty much everybody knows who you're talking about, BNT and me. I think you need to stop. This is my advice to you now, because I've watched you on Anne's interview. You need to stop suggesting that I forced you to do anything, or told you to tell lies, or confess to anything. What we didn't realise is what that truth was as it unfolded, because it was live. So obviously, the more that came out, the more dramatic and obviously shocking it was for us. We had to look at all that situation. But to go around and suggest that I or BNT, or when he suggests there, when he talks about there, is not true, and he needs to stop saying that. Now, I can only be as fair as that, Anne. I can only say, listen, stop saying it. It's not true. I'm here now telling you it's not true. Sean was asked to tell the truth, not make anything up or make things worse for himself.
All right, so I'm going to call Callie Diamond right now and get her on the phone. And she heard exactly what you said to me. This is live. I'm not going to give her any advance notice. I'm going to ask her to say what you said to me. Are you okay with that?
So to me, it looks like he clearly did give her a warning that he was going to be phoning her, and almost certainly told her exactly what to say. It's not rocket science that that's what was going on there. Not that we could really hear what Callie said anyway, to be honest with you. It was quite garbled, And we know that Callie has autism and brain damage, so again, is it really ethical to be dragging her into this as a witness and asking her to say these things? And of course it did not fly with Muhammed. You can actually hear how incredulous he is at this, and this is how people will react to the majority of what Shaun Attwood tells them outside of the Daddygate universe. Muhammed almost chokes on his tea by the sounds of things, because this proves nothing to anyone who isn't totally gullible.
And you heard that 100% when he called, didn't you, on speakerphone?
Yeah, I was in the room.
There you go, Anne. 100% verified by someone else who heard the conversation.
No, Shaun, you're not verifying anything, Shaun. You just got somebody on the phone saying something.
Again, this proves absolutely nothing, but Shaun thinks it's a slam dunk. If so, then all Muhammed needs to do is say that he had the call on speakerphone at the time as well, and he has 2 witnesses who heard the conversation, and it falls in his favour, because by Shaun Attwood's logic, that would mean Muhammed Butt wins this one. Now, another thing that Shaun Attwood does is keep text messages, and he reads them out on air. This is quite a strange thing to do for someone who gets so offended at being called a snitch, which I wouldn't have thought he minded, considering his false copyright strikes, his constant complaints about cyberbullying, his approval of his allies reporting his critics to the police, and his support of people who report channels for cyberbullying, etc. But if all that wasn't enough, he reads out private messages on air to get one over on other people to prove his points. So just like he did with supposed texts from James English, here he is once again reading out a text, this time one that he sent to Muhammed in order to try and back up his story here. So he's trying to show that by having some kind of text conversation with Muhammed in July, that this means Muhammed is completely wrong to call Shaun out for defamation.
Other than that, I've completely had you back. I've got nothing bad to say about BNT. In fact, I recently texted you, and I'll read the text. This was the 23rd of July. Hi, Muhammed. If YouTube denies my termination appeal, I'm going to send the public over to BNT to watch the videos we've got over there. This whole thing about cyberbullying started with BNT trailer number 5. I also recently filmed 2 hours of David Icke on his island and have nowhere to place it. So as recently as the 23rd of July, Muhammed, I've totally treated you like a gentleman and I've supported BNT. So it's ludicrous for you to say I'm defaming you or BNT.
Shaun Attwood clearly did this to try and make Muhammed look like the bad one here, and it was a desperate attempt. And then he had the audacity to claim that this was him treating Muhammed like a complete gentleman. All that text proves is that he was asking Muhammed for a favour and trying to butter him up by saying that he'll be sending the public to brand YouTube, as if Muhammed needs Shaun Attwood's negligible sway with the public to be sent to brand YouTube. It doesn't prove anything either way, it just shows that Shaun Attwood tried to contact Muhammed when his channel got banned off YouTube, but he's dressing it up like they've been in contact back and forth, and that Muhammed is somehow being disingenuous and playing games now by calling Shaun Attwood out on this live stream. Then we've got the part where Shaun stated that Muhammed outed himself and made a fool of himself, which did not go down too well.
He's just outed himself, Anne, on your channel right now. And everything I said on True Geordie...
Shaun. I wouldn't play them games that I've outed myself. I can assure you making
everything
things worse.
I said on True
You know what
Geordie...
you're doing.
Everything I said
Zero.
on True Geordie, Callie Diamond has just confirmed exactly what I said on this conversation. So you've made a fool of
It
yourself.
doesn't
She
mean anything,
heard.
Shaun. I'm going to get everything
heard the
confirmed with
exact-
writing, with evidence.
She
It doesn't
heard
mean
the
anything to me
exact
that you've got Callie on the
conversation.
phone and she's saying things.
This was not a clever move at all, and along with his repeated assertions that, again, Muhammed was trying to trick him, I would not be surprised if he does end up having to settle this out of court to avoid getting sued here. Muhammed made it very clear that he believes Shaun Attwood is defaming him and his company, Brand YouTube, via innuendo. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes, if anywhere. But Muhammed did state that he'd be gathering all the evidence against Shaun to put all the facts out there. And if that is the case, I'd suggest that he also gets the clip of Callie saying that she'll just tell people what they want to hear, because if that is Shaun's only witness to this and he's using a false witness to further solidify his defamatory statements, then the court obviously needs to see that, because that could have resulted in a large part of the audience who were unfamiliar with Callie's previous statements actually believing Shaun over Muhammed here, thus furthering any potential defamation and reputational damage. Whether it actually goes to court or not, of course, I don't know, but this is something that was clearly on Shaun Attwood's mind. He mentioned a few times that he was not going to say anything that could land him in court, and that Muhammed was trying to trick him into saying things that could get him into trouble in court.
Then you
You're
address
trying
it.
to trick me right now into agreeing with what you just said for a legal situation that will go against me. So I'm not going to agree with what you just said. I'm not going to comment on it. All I'm going to do is say that what Callie said right now, 100%, she heard that conversation. She repeated exactly what I had said on True Geordie. She had no prior knowledge I was going to call her. I didn't even know you were going to come on today. And that right there proves exactly what was said to me.
Shaun.
And what was said to me was not what you just said. You're trying to get me to agree to something so you can create a legal situation.
I know.
He also said that he was wording things legalistically so as not to result in brand YouTube being identified. But as Muhammed said during this conversation, why would Shaun Attwood have to worry? If Shaun Attwood's telling the truth, why is he worried about going to court? So overall, this really was a fine example of Attwood getting completely schooled by someone who just isn't playing his games. Muhammed and I have had our public discussions in the past where we disagreed on certain things, but in this case, this was a beautiful thing to see, because it was just someone standing up for themselves against Shaun Attwood and utterly calling him out, which is something so few people do, especially publicly. And it was just great to see somebody calling Shaun out, who Shaun couldn't come back and call a troll. Anyway folks, I'm going to leave that one there just now. Don't forget to like the video, share it on your social media, and maybe hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. I do appreciate you all for tuning in, and I hope you do all have a great weekend. I have unfortunately had to put YouTube really far down my list of priorities at the moment due to personal circumstances, and I almost haven't had time to make this one, but I couldn't let it pass without bringing this to you. So hopefully you have enjoyed it, and please put your comments below to let me know what you think of this situation. It kind of seems like the Daddygate situation is never ending. There's always some new drama to come out of it, which is quite funny. There should also be a Daddygate podcast coming soon. As I say, I really just need to get the time, and it's running away from me at the moment very quickly. But go and subscribe to the Daddygate podcast down below, and you'll get a notification when that new episode drops, whenever it drops. Hopefully that'll be soon, because we'll be talking about all this stuff, myself and Wheezy. You should also check out Wheezy as well on Odyssey. He was flagged off YouTube for criticising Shaun Attwood, so go and subscribe to him over on Odyssey. I'm also on Odyssey as well, so you can catch me over there too. This video, like all my others and some extra, are over there, so hit me up on Odyssey as well if you want to support other platforms. I might even start a brand YouTube channel, you never know. Anyway folks, I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll speak to you soon. Cheers.
So are you trying to trick your audience, Shaun, and your subscribers by speaking the way you're doing? Are you trying to trick them into thinking something